Good afternoon. Welcome to IMSM. I'm Maria Dimitrova, Head of Business Development and Lead Auditor on Quality, Information Security, and Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. I'll be talking today about the 2020 trends in ISO implementations, on which we based our 2021 strategy. ISO compliant management systems have never been in such high demand. Our most recent research shows surprising changes in how organizations approach continual improvement and seek to integrate their existing systems into one fully operational system thanks to the relevant ISO standards. And the legitimate question here is, why ISO standards? The simple answer to this question is that ISO standards, ISO compliant management systems, offer a common and internationally recognized work frame to help organizations identify risks and opportunities, and thus tackle uncertainty. This said, I think that the ISO survey for 2019 is an excellent starting point for our talk today. In 2019, as well as at the beginning of 2020, ISO 9001 Quality Management Systems was by far the most frequently implemented ISO standard. Well, as we can see, according to the ISO survey for 2019, only, for instance, 3% of the certificates issued that year aimed to conform with ISO 27001, Information Security. The same percentage of certificates were issued for ISO 45001, which is the first Occupational Health and Safety standard. And interestingly enough, there were few organizations interested in implementing business continuity management systems or systems compliant with ISO 22301. Well, last year, with the beginning of the pandemic, our IMSM quarterly surveys detected that those trends might have changed. The analysis based on the metrics for the second quarter of 2020 show the clear tendency for organizations to implement and integrate a broader range of management systems. Well, the trend did not change during the last quarter of 2020. Or organizations are definitely switching the interest from standards that have traditionally been considered sector-specific to a broader range of implementations. Although, as we can confirm, ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 are still the most implemented standards. As leading ISO specialists, IMSM delivers high-quality ISO consultancy to organizations of all sizes and all sectors in over 20 countries worldwide. Traditionally, our most significant markets have been the US, UK, Germany, France, and Canada. So, I'll focus on these 5 markets and break down our findings per country and per sector for you. Let's start with interest in ISO implementations per country. Our latest survey confirms the trends detected earlier in 2020. Interestingly, though, organizations in France and Germany are more likely to focus on quality, on information security, and on environmental management systems, whilst in the US, UK, and Canada, organizations seek a broader coverage. But why is ISO 27001 in such high demand? We're talking information security. It's all about policies to ensure protection in a global scale. Over the last decade, digital technologies have transformed both the economy and society across countries and across industries. Data has become the center of this digital evolution and a means to generate new information. To capture the benefits of a better use of data and enhance productivity and competitiveness, standardization is required. In the area of information security and cybersecurity, a common framework is essential to tackle threats. Industry leaders such as the US, UK, and the EU actually aim to improve the mechanisms to ensure highest levels of information security while ensuring that A. Information flows within the market and across sectors. B. Common rules and ethical values are respected, especially regarding personal data protection and consumer protection. And C. There is fair access to and use of information, and this fair access is guaranteed. It's a difficult task, and to secure benefits from the current digital transformation, national strategies are being implemented through national regulations, to which ISO standards offer a common international framework for integration. Well, let's see then how it goes per country, starting with the US. In 2020, US-based businesses demonstrated the most interest in implementing a sector-specific standard, namely ISO 17025, showing how adaptable organizations need to be. ISO 17025 is applicable, as any other standard, to all organizations performing laboratory activities and specifies the general requirements for competence, impartiality, and consistent operations. ISO 17025 was not on the list of standards in 2019 if we refer to our first slide. Back to Europe. Organizations in Germany and France, meanwhile, were more likely to implement management systems on quality, environment, and information security. Now, if we add France, we'll see that there, organizations also show the interest in implementing the first international standard on occupational health and safety, or ISO 45001. But before we go further, let me please elaborate on information security. Information, as well as all related processes, systems, networks, and people, are generally considered to be assets in achieving business objectives. Now, information held and processed by an organization is subject to threats. If traditionally organizations have dealt with threats such as computer-assisted fraud, espionage, sabotage, vandalism, fire, flood, etc., all good-fashioned threats, recently, merely several years ago, we started also facing challenges related to malicious code, computer hacking, and denial of service attacks. If it were not enough, in March last year, because of the severe lockdown measures in many countries, threats were quite literally brought home. For most businesses, it meant ad hoc measures, which always translates into increased costs. The question is why it translates into increased costs. And the answer is quite simple. Most organizations fail to consider efficiently information security while designing and developing the information systems. Information security is not always considered, or if it is, it seems to be regarded as a technical solution and often is mistaken with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is indeed part of information security. However, information security goes further. It is essential to understand it. And it is essential to understand as well that the information security levels and the information security coverage that can be achieved through technical means are limited, as opposite to the coverage that an ISO 27001 management system offers. Moving to the UK and Canada, we will see now that both countries present a profile similar to the US, with an interest in a broader range of standards, including ISO 45001, which I will remember is Occupational Health and Safety. So, I promised country-specific, I promised also sector-specific data. Our data analysis shows that the spike of interest in both information security and business continuity compliance in the current COVID-dependent business environment is now a consistent trend across quarters, countries, and sectors as well. Starting with legal services, please be aware of the fact that nowadays information security is by far the most requested standard in the sector. It is also one of the leading standards in finance, where we have an interesting reading, because ISO standards prove apparently essential. Let me illustrate my point referring to the Financial Reporting Council. The FRC has postulated a reporting model based on 3 strands: objective-driven, communication-focused, and an overreaching set of principles, which is literally what ISO management systems implement. For instance, objectives and communications are 2 key clauses in almost all the management standards. The FRC expands further on reporting. Please allow me to summarize their approach for you. According to them, the company stakeholders should understand the organization's performance and how it generates and sustains value. They should also understand how it makes decisions and hold the company to account. The FRC considers that the company itself should determine its key stakeholders. And this is almost straight out of clause 4 of almost any of the ISO management system standards. So in other words, it just screams ISO standards at us. Now, for those unfamiliar with ISO standards, let me do a little scene setting. The management system standards have now been harmonized. They use the same format and highlight common themes. For instance, they all contain 10 clauses, which share almost the same headings. Many of these clauses are in fact general and apply whatever standard the organization is adopting, which explains the broad range of standards we find in finance, including a seemingly unrelated to finance standard, such as ISO 45001 Environmental Management. Increased interest in different standards and their implementations is consistent in logistic and supply chain. ISO 9001 with a 34% in logistics. However, we have a rising number, 14,001, 45,001, and 25,001. Very similar readings in the construction sector, where it comes as no surprise, we have 25% in occupational health and safety. As I said, this is the first international standard on occupational health and safety, which was meant to be adopted by May this year, and now because of COVID, we push until November 2021, so still some time to implement it. Information technology and network security, no surprises there. Readings are quite clear. The sector is interested in information security, quality management system, and environmental management. Again, it may seem unrelated to information technology. However, server allocations and the general IT infrastructure needs to comply with environmental requirements. So, ISO 14001 is in high demand in the sector again. Consumer goods and services present the same trend. And here comes a sector that previously had little interest in ISO implementations. I'm talking about sports and leisure. Similarly, we have quite a new trend in hospitality, and to comply with the current circumstances, the sector actually is quite keen on business continuity. And finally, let's have a look at manufacturing, one of the sectors that traditionally implement ISO-compliant management systems. Again, a wide range of interest across all management systems on ISO. Okay, let's talk about the key benefits of management systems. There are many benefits of implementing ISO management systems. In my opinion, though, the most important is that these systems are certifiable for compliance against the internationally recognized ISO standards. And by becoming ISO certified, organizations gain a high level of international recognition for something very important, for meeting the standard requirements relevant to their industry sector. And this said, thank you for listening. We're happy to answer your questions.